but man, am I just so relieved that I'm actually enjoying this at this point. And it may be a 5-star. It may be. I was not expecting that. If I'd have made a bingo board for this book, none of that stuff would have been on this. So my mirror has arrived and it's potentially too big to get up the stairs. Good morning, my guys. Welcome to this week's weekly reading vlog. I am aiming to achieve great things during this vlog. I am hoping that I'm gonna get a lot read, but then just looking at my stack of current reads, I feel like if I got through just these, that's already like a big ask for this week, but I'm gonna try my best. The problem is though, is we're not getting started at a great point because I am incredibly anxious today. Like I was gonna say I'm stressed. I'm not stressed because of anything going on around me. Everything is chill. My body just wants me to think that I'm stressed and it's not fun. So this morning, it's like 11:15. I have eaten, I've drank coffee, and I've lain on the sofa with Brie, just like holding her for half an hour, trying to get my shit together. I'm feeling a little bit better now. I've turned all the notifications off my phone so that I can kind of, I just don't want to be perceived, you know, like I want to be off the grid for at least today. So I need to go for a run. I say I don't want to be perceived. I did plan on doing sprints today, and right now, or like when I woke up and I was like, cool, we'll get sprints scheduled, I was like, I just can't do it. What I'm gonna do, my first step into actually moving past my anxiety was to start this vlog, and then I'm gonna go for a run and see how I feel about sprints after that. I have extremely frazzled hair as well, which is stressing me out, which is, I mean, I had it lifted yesterday, so this is pretty normal and it will settle down, but like, look, she's broken. So in terms of my currently reading, the main focus, at least at the beginning of this vlog, is going to be A Little Hatred by Jo Abercrombie, because the live show for this is going to be, I'm pretty sure it's on Zaf's channel. I need to announce that today as well. I'm pretty sure it's going to be on Zaf's channel on the 19th, which I think is actually going to happen before this vlog, so it's pointless me telling you, but there you are. So I have a week to read this one. It is less than 700 pages, so I think I can do it. It's 485. I just, after not loving the standalones in the First Law world, I'm not feeling especially motivated to pick this one up, which is the issue. It is the first book in the second trilogy in the First Law universe, which is following characters related to the ones in the first trilogy, and also some of the characters from the standalones. That is pretty much all I know about this. I did start it the week before last and I read a grand total of 20 pages. I learned nothing from those 20 pages, so I'm pretty much still going into this blind, and I'll let you know how it unfolds. My audiobook for the time being is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel, which is probably the thing that I'm enjoying the most out of my current reads right now. This one is a sci-fi series that is, I'm pretty sure it's all told in like mixed media or transcripts predominantly, but book 1 definitely is, if not book 2 and 3. I don't own physical copies of them and I can't remember for sure, but the first book at least is told in transcripts, and it is about, it's not about a woman, but one of our main characters is a woman who is heading up a project to uncover all of the pieces of this like giant robot statue thing, and she was actually there when the first piece was discovered because she was riding her bike and she fell into a hole and landed in this giant robot hand. So later in her life as a scientist, she has been asked to head up this project as a mysterious presence that may or may not be related to the government is trying to find and assemble all of these pieces. The main mystery is like, how did they get there? Because people think they've been there for like thousands of years, but the technology is so advanced that that doesn't make any sense. And also, what is their purpose? So I really enjoy the format of this, especially listening to it in audio. And you know, I love a good sci-fi, so I'm definitely enjoying it in that regard as well. The last book that I'm currently reading is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This hold finally came in at my library. This was my April Patreon pick. It was Lindsay's pick, and it is a small town romance, I'm pretty confident in saying, about a girl who ran away from her wedding and she got a call from her sister asking for help. So she drives out to this small town to help her sister, and she walks into this diner where she meets this guy who thinks that she's her twin sister and wants to throw her out because she calls her evil twin. She's a bit of a troublemaker, very different from our main character, and while she's in the diner talking to him, her sister actually comes and steals her car and leaves the main character with custody of a niece that she never knew that she had. So it's like kind of a good girl, bad guy romance, but I'm not sure. Like at this point, I don't think the bad guy's all that bad. He's just like a grumpy silly. It's more of a grumpy sunshine romance right now, I feel like is how it's playing out. The writing is quite peppy and perky, so it's taking me a little while to get into it. And I'm also reading this in bed. I mentioned a couple of vlogs ago that I wanted to try out like having a romance in bed that's like a little bit easier to read and is a little bit lighter at bedtime than something like this. But then it was my birthday week, I had a lot going on and I only had time to focus on one book, so I've had to put this down for a little while, but I'm 58 pages into it. It is quite big for a romance, so even though 58 pages is quite a lot, I feel like I don't have much of a feel for it right now. I am a little bit concerned about the fact that it's almost 500 pages though, because I think for a small town contemporary romance, that's a lot. Like that feels like a lot, but I'll see how it goes. I don't know if I'm going to have finished this by the end of the week. Depends if I'm going to continue just reading a couple of chapters a day in bed or whether I'll move it into my primary read at some point. But this is what we currently have going on. I would love to read a lot this week. I would love to spend most of my time reading this week. I do have a habit though of when I have time off or time that I could take off, like today, I could just do nothing today, but I'm like, no, I'll do sprints and I'll announce the live show for Catch Up Book Club. And then my friend who's a hairdresser wanted me to create her a logo, so I was like, yeah, I'll do that and I'll do all this stuff. And what's actually probably gonna happen, I'm calling it now, is that throughout the week I'm just gonna go, oh yeah, like I'll just do this and I'll just do this, and then I'll just spend all of my days doing stuff instead of taking the time, especially because like last week was so socially heavy. Like I did 15,000 steps a day and I worked out every day. It was a lot, so I kind of want a few days to kind of just rest, recharge and read. Rest, recharge and read. That should be my new mantra. But whether that actually happens or not, we'll find out. Stay tuned, I guess.
Been to California, never been to LA, so I'll stay home and write these songs.
So I did indeed get my shit together and I managed to do sprints for a couple of hours, which was great because after I went for my run I was feeling a little bit better, but I know that I would still have struggled to actually get some reading done, mainly because I haven't wanted to carry on with First Law based on my feelings like about the standalones and the short stories. Like I didn't really like them, so I'm glad that I did that because now I am 120 pages into A Little Hatred. I'm actually really enjoying it. It was a little bit rough for the first, I want to say like 50 pages, because I love authors like Brandon Sanderson that kind of lay it all out for you at the beginning of book. Like at the beginning of The Final Empire, we find out everything about like the Mistborn magic system that the characters know to date. Like you get to know about the politics. He's really good at establishing who the characters are concisely, like kind of at the moment that you meet them. And Joe Abercrombie doesn't do that, and I always need context. Like if I'm watching a movie, I always look up like the 3-line synopsis before we start, so I kind of know where the thing is going, because otherwise it's like, you know how your brain makes memories and connections by like attaching, I'm displaying them as like little balls, like they attach the things together and then they kind of like float around your brain together. When I read Joe Abercrombie books, it's like the little balls have nothing to attach to, so I feel like I'm lacking context, and until that comes in I struggle. And it does take him like a little bit of time, because especially with me knowing that these characters are related at least somewhat to characters that I've read from before, every character that I'm introduced to I'm like, okay, so who are your parents, like how have you ended up here, like how are you connected to the series? series. And so it took me 50-ish pages to settle into it. But like the difference, the immediate difference between like this and the first trilogy compared to the standalones is wild. Like I immediately started the standalones and pretty quickly I was like, this is average at best. And then obviously the longer I go into the book, the less interested I am. I'm just immediately interested in this, and there just must be such a drastic difference in his writing style and like story construction between the standalones and the series for me to feel this way. I know that generally I do prefer to read series, and that could be like a large reason why I feel this way, but man, am I just so relieved that I'm actually enjoying this at this point. In typical Joe Abercrombie fashion, however, I could not tell you what this is about. It is like the plot is a culmination of everything that we've read so far. Like I will say that Joe Abercrombie's world is kind of intricate, so we've had like lots of little threads that went throughout the entirety of the first trilogy and have expanded in like the 20 years since then, continued in the same direction in some ways, but then you also have the influence of the plots of all of the standalones, which have like built the kind of world that we are now in terms of like the politics, who's ruling what country, who is a threat to the Union, and it's just a culmination of all of those little bits that forms the setup for this plot. Now, like with the first lot trilogy, this also has a bunch of characters that are starting out in different positions and different locations that I assume are eventually going to come together to form a plot. But right now, I couldn't even tell you how many characters we have because we're alternating perspectives constantly. But I would say we have like at least 4 or 5 characters that are on different paths in this world. Something that I do find interesting is that while the setting is very familiar to me, we have had some evolution in here. We are now in the industrial age of this world where they are mining for metals, they're using coal to build like factories and foundries. They are also at a point where things that used to be luxury items for nobility are becoming commonplace items in the household. So we've had some progression within the society, which is interesting, especially with kind of the knock-on effect this has on the plot, the politics, the society, and the characters. So I'm having a decent time, and because of that, like when I was doing sprints, I realized I had to read 70 pages a day to have this done by the end of this vlog, which will be like 2 days before the live show. And then I was like, you know what, like I'll just carry on to the end of this sprint. And then after that I was like, you know what, I'll just read it for another sprint. And then I thought, tonight I'll read some Lucy Score, and now I'm still reading it now. I am alternating though between one chapter of this, which actually the chapters are quite short, which is nice, and a game of Fortnite, because the end of the season, this is the like Greek Gods Olympus season, the end of the season is going to be it's like the 20 something of May, and I'm currently level 92. Now I always say every season I'm like, this is a season that I'm going to grind and I'm going to get all the cool bonus rewards. Obviously that never happens. If you're familiar with Fortnite, you know the bonus rewards are like kind of hard to get. You need a lot of points, a lot of stars. So I'm just chipping away at some of my quests. I'm going to make as much progress in the battle pass as I can, and I'm also going to make some progress in my book. That is pretty much my evening sorted. I am going out at 10 p.m. because I can't remember. I think I mentioned it during sprints. I don't think I mentioned in this vlog, but the Northern Lights, which we saw last night, are also potentially going to be present and visible tonight. It is, I think, not as strong as it was last night, but I'm hoping that we can still see a little bit of them, especially because we didn't go too far out last night, and I do live like countryside adjacent, so there are places we can go where there's less light pollution, where we'll hopefully get a little bit of a better view, because last night they were really visible on my camera, but to the eye they were kind of just like hazy, almost cloudy streaks in the sky, and I want to see them a little bit more with my eyeballs if at all possible.
My friends are getting married, they're all settling down, so I lay here, watch the ceiling fan growing.
He's a little goblin.
And it's always gone too fast, like a trick.
Good morning, guys. I wish that it was a good morning for me, but I am once again riddled with anxiety. Now, thinking about it, and based on last month as well, I think that this is the week of the month that I would usually have crippling PMS that would actually normally be 10 days to 2 weeks of the month. But now that I'm like taking medication, seeking treatment for that, it's much more manageable than it was but I do still have a lot of anxiety. So it's like my fight or flight is constantly like on, and I have periods where like I'm a little bit less anxious, but the slightest thing will trigger me back into that state. And it's the kind of thing where like, because I can feel it constantly, like I suck at looking past the current situation. Like I suck at being like, okay, this is gonna pass, it's fine. I suck at like sitting with my feelings and sitting with the discomfort. I just want rid of it as fast as possible. So when I am anxious, it does tend to affect my life quite a bit, but still nowhere near as much as it did when I was having like super bad PMS symptoms, and I had like fatigue, I was like physically weak, I was depressed, extremely tired, and also anxious. So I'll take the anxiety over all of that, but I have just spent my morning nitpicking at stuff, because something else when I'm anxious, and I know that this is an anxiety thing, this is what anxiety does, but I will be constantly looking at more things to make me anxious to maintain the feeling of anxiety, and it is frustrating. So last night I was anxious, and because of that I didn't get to sleep until I want to say like 1:30, 2 a.m. So I slept in a little bit today, and that's fine because I've decided that today I'm going to be filming a read with me. So I filmed one of these like, I think it was 3 years ago now. It's like Pomodoro style, 25 minutes of reading, 5-minute break, 4 times, and then it ends. So it's kind of like reading sprints but in a video that you can play back. And I've been meaning to make one for a while, but it does take a little while to film, obviously, because I have to read for at least 2 hours, and then there's also like time on each end of that so that I get a cut that like I can use without any kind of disturbance in it. And then also for the last 2 years we've had Brie, and if you all know Brie, you know she is a wrecking ball. So trying to guarantee on 25 minutes of undisturbed time when Brie is in your life, it just ain't happening. But now that the bedroom's been renovated, I'm gonna film it up here, so I've got myself kind of set up, and I'm gonna get some reading done. And hopefully, I don't think that it will, I'm hoping that because I have to sit and read for 25 minutes because I'm going to be filmed, that I will actually sit and read for 25 minutes and not just have like anxious thoughts constantly. But I have read quite a bit of this now. I'm 234 pages in, and I'm still having a really good time. This is actually reminding me a lot of Mistborn, because with this industrial age we have a lot of things that you typically see in like Victorian stuff. So you have like orphanages, you have workhouses, you have people who are working in factories that are paid literally nothing and have horrible conditions, who are contracting like lifelong like chronic illnesses because of their working conditions. And because of that, there is an uprising that is like a key part of this book, where these people are trying to overthrow the elite and get their life back, because they are living in places that used to be green, that used to have like countryside and nature, they used to be farmers, but because of the current like economical situation and like how society is advancing, they're being forced into these cities to work in factories, and their living conditions are awful. So it is giving me like slight Mistborn vibes, but also like Victorian elements as well with how this is playing out. And then I think I'm gonna just read this while I'm filming the read with me, but I have also read a little bit more of this. I'm 100 pages in, guys, and still not a lot is really happening. It's fine to read, so it's not like I'm close to DNF in it or anything. Like, it's not that I'm exactly bored, but I'm not like enthralled. Like, I'm not so excited to see where this goes, because 100 pages in, like, very little has happened. I did say that like the length of this as a contemporary romance is concerning to me, because I do feel like past 350 pages contemporary romances do seem to be a little bit tedious, and this one's like 480, especially with this being a small town romance as well, which I haven't read many if any small town romances. The plot, I feel, is going to be, I don't want to minimize it and be like, oh, it's a small plot or anything, but I feel like it's not something that needs pages and pages and pages of explanation and exploration. So I'm interested to see kind of how this progresses through the rest of the book, but like, I'm having a fine time with it, but I'm not sold and I'm not hooked right now. So we'll see how this one plays out. But that is enough dawdling. I'm trying to like dance around deliveries as well. The Every guy is coming with Occult Beauty order, and I think maybe my Fairy Loot Romantasy box between 11 and 1. And because I spent so much time being anxious this morning, it is now 20 past 11 and I haven't started filming this video yet. So hopefully I will be able to get out a 25-minute section before the Every guy turns up. But keep your fingers crossed for me.
4 blocks of work today, 3 2-ish minute recoveries. Take a look at your touchscreen. These are the numbers here to guide us. Resistance is your road, it's your playground. You're in control. To the right is tough, to the left is easier.
Love, love can steal kills me to think I'm avoiding the pill. I can't swallow.
Something that I never thought that I would say again about a Joe Abercrombie book after reading the standalones and the short stories, and take this with a pinch of salt, it may all change, but I am 360 out of 480-ish pages into this book, and it may be a 5-star. It may be. I am invested. I like the characters. I care about the characters. We had like a high stakes combat situation in the bit that I've just read, and I was getting ready to do some editing, so I was like transferring files, and I was like, okay, while they transfer I'll read a chapter, and the chapter ended where it commenced, and then that's all I could think about, because the way that the writing like built up to this event just had me on the edge of my seat, because it was like trying to figure out what the outcome was going to be, because I had high hopes, but also like it's Joe Abercrombie and he makes everything like super depressing. So I'm just like in this story in a way that I don't feel like I've been into any of the other books in this series, because I did like some of the characters in the first trilogy, but it was mainly how interesting they were in terms of like the duality, like the good and the bad of all of the characters, that had me interested in them. Whereas these are genuinely not bad people for the most part. My favorites are Leo and Ricky right now, but I also really like Savine, and out of the three of those I would say the only one that is not at least a decent person would be Savine, but she has her reasons, and like there's reasons why she kind of is the way that she is based on her upbringing. It's very easy to say how she's turned out that way, and part of the unlikable things about her I guess would be her ignorance, and it's very interesting based on the position that she's been put in this book whether that ignorance is going to continue like after these matters resolve. But the problem with being invested in this book and invested in these characters is, like I said, Joe Abercrombie really puts the grim in grimdark. Like a lot of this stuff isn't super gory, which I think is what people expect when they hear grimdark, but everything is just super bleak. Like everything is cyclical. People don't really grow in this series in the first law. They kind of just come round full circle, and it's the same for the plots. Like we don't really progress in positive ways. The heroes aren't really heroes, they're just people who kind of get swept up and entangled in a greater plot. So I'm concerned based on the fact that I genuinely like and I'm invested in a lot of these characters. I'm really worried about where this book, or not necessarily the book, but the series especially, is going to take these characters in this story.
Haven't seen my twin.
Good evening, my guys. Curtis is playing Fortnite, and we have just gotten back from his dad's birthday dinner where I drank 3 pints of Madry. So I'm not feeling the most like with it right now, but I am 433 pages into A Little Hatred, and I'm kind of determined to finish because I have like 50 pages left. So I mean, it is, what time is it? It's 10 o'clock. So I'm not actually feeling all that optimistic because it's generally my bedtime. Plus I've had a couple of drinks, but we'll see what we can do. I don't think that this comes as a surprise to anyone when I say that last night when I said that I was finishing that book, I read 5 pages, I went to bed, I read a chapter of Things We Never Get Over, and then I went to sleep. So I still have not finished A Little Hatred, and honestly, it is all I want to do. All I want to do is read that book, but I have decided that today is the day that I'm going to do my accounts, because I keep putting it off. Like I like to finalize them as soon as the tax year ends, and I've already been putting it off for a month. And the thing is as well is that I actually really like doing my accounts. I never get excited about doing it, but when I start, like I get locked in and there is no stopping me from doing it. So I have already started those, but I am going to be doing Patreon sprints all afternoon while I work through them, and my hope is that I will wrap up maybe in a couple of hours and be able to finish off A Little Hatred, because I am enjoying it so much. I honestly, like, I had high hopes for this week's vlog. We all know that I did. I wanted to finish 3 books and maybe start a 4th, and at the moment it's looking like that isn't going to happen. So my new kind of revised plan is to finish A Little Hatred and see if I can maybe get through Things We Never Got Over, because actually I knew that one, because I was obviously in a big queue for that book, so I knew that would have to go back to the library and I couldn't renew it. But somebody has now placed a hold on My Dark Romeo as well, so I also need to get through this one pretty sharpish. And the next vlog that I'm gonna start filming is Shelve It or Scrap It. So seems like I bit off more than I can chew, but honestly, like, I'm not surprised. I only have myself to blame. But I am hoping that this evening, after I've done my workout, I can get a solid amount of reading done. But we'll see, because generally, like, when I've wrapped up everything for the day, it's 9 p.m. and I have like an hour to read before I go to bed.
Marathon finishers up in the room, and we got a lot of California in here, so let's go. Inhale.
I feel like it's taken my entire life to get here, but I have done my workout, I've had my shower, I've got changed into my pajamas, I have my couch duvet out, which is how you know I mean business, and I'm going to finally read the last 35, I think, no, less than that, just 30 pages of A Little Hatred. I am very excited, but a little bit nervous because of like what I've already said about Joe Abercrombie and how his work is always like really bleak. I'm really wondering like how he's going to end this book, but I am incredibly nervous about it as well, especially because everything's kind of calm at the minute. I really don't know what kind of point he's gonna leave us on, but it's finally time that I found out. Good morning, my guys. I'm not having a good day. I slept in this morning and I hate it. Like, there is nothing that I hate more than sleeping in. And I don't know whether it's a remainder from, like, you know, when you're a kid and your parents tell you like not to be in bed all day, or whether it is because sleeping in, like sleeping a lot, is a indicator that my mental health isn't great, which I mean it isn't. I've been riddled with anxiety all week, but like I said, still nowhere near as bad as it was a few months ago before I kind of sorted myself out a bit. But now I'm just feeling really deflated. I feel like I have wasted my entire day. I can't do anything of any worth today now. And yeah, I was actually going to take today off as well, in which case it wouldn't have mattered. But then I realized that I do actually have some things that I really, well, one thing in particular that is better done sooner rather than later. And then in my head I'm like, oh well, if you'd have got up at 7:30, because I did originally get up at 7:30 and then I fell asleep again. So I'm like, if you got up at 7:30, you would probably be done with that task now and you'd have the rest of the day ahead of you. But anyway, that's just an insight into the inside of my brain, which honestly you probably didn't want, because it's not a fun place to be sometimes. But last night I did finish A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie, and this is my favorite book of the year so far. I'm gonna let that sink in, because if I went through all of the ratings for all of the books in this series, the first trilogy started out real strong, 454, amazing, decent. Then we move into the standalones where we went 233. The short story collection, a 2. And then we come back with the first book in the last trilogy, 5 stars. This was everything that all of the standalones just weren't. And like I've mentioned earlier in this vlog, while it was quite similar to the first trilogy, we're back in that writing style. Some of the characters are quite similar. Like, a criticism that I've heard of Joe Abercrombie in like the live shows and stuff is that people generally think that it's just kind of like the same characters or the same character types repeated over and over again, and I definitely do see that, but I do think that these characters have a little bit more, like, they feel a little bit more like heroes, and I am under no illusion that they are. I really don't think that they are, because that's just not Joe Abercrombie's style. But what that does is that really has me rooting for them. Like, I want them to be heroes, and that means that when I'm disappointed that they're not, it's gonna emotionally impact me so much more, because like, I'm rooting for them. And that level of investment in the story, the building of tension, the way that I couldn't wait to find out what happened in some elements, the plot twists did shock me. One of them I kind of spoiled for myself, because when I was checking the page, like how many pages, I accidentally saw the last line, which does infer some things. But the other one, I did not see it coming, not so late in the game. It does make a lot of sense though, and it's really cool, and I'm excited to see what happens in the next book, because I just think it's going to be chaos, but hopefully chaos of the best kind. Now, I will say that despite me giving this 5 stars, despite me loving it, despite me now calling this my best book of the year so far, I do still think, and I said this in the trilogy mythology. Like, Joe Abercrombie is very heavily influenced by Game of Thrones. You cannot avoid it. And I do still think at this stage in the game that these books are like taking all of the elements and all of the character types of Game of Thrones, putting them in a bag, shaking it up, taking some out, and then putting like the characters in different situations in different places than they are in Game of Thrones, but it's still the same thing. Like, it's the same thing in a different font, you know? But then that doesn't make it less enjoyable. I just do think that it's kind of very transparent and obvious that Joe Abercrombie has done that, which leaves it feeling like a little bit uninspired. I do need to crack on with Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, but I did find out that My Dark Romeo does not have a hold on it. I don't know whether somebody took it off, but it's only this one that is now due back at the library by the end of the month. I'm currently 200 pages into it, and I gotta say, it has only just got to a point where like it's actually getting into anything romantic, because before, well, I still just don't feel like it is. Before, it was just them being horrible and talking about how much like they can't stand each other, and you know, sometimes I can get behind that, but this is a long ass book for a contemporary, and I'm 206 pages in. Okay, at page 170 I thought that this was a cutesy small town romance about this boy who'd always, or guy, man, who'd always grown up in this town, and you know, like, he wasn't the greatest guy, which is why he's the bad boy, but like, he has a barbershop, he's got tattoos, he's sexy, he's surly, he's grumpy, and this girl who is like the goody two-shoes twin sister of this like absolute wreck that comes into this town to inadvertently like save her niece running away from her wedding, and she just falls into the arms of this big capable man, and they live happily ever after in this tiny town. Up to 170 pages into this, there is nothing really that had led me to believe that this story was going to be anything other than that. By page 190, we had an illegal gambling ring. We had somebody involved in a string of petty thefts, like essentially career thieves. We had criminals turning up from out of town, all different sorts of criminals all at once. And then somebody got shot. I'm shocked. I was not expecting that. If I'd have made a bingo board for this book, if I'd made a prediction bingo, none of that stuff would have been on this. I'm trying to see if it even says. There is nothing in this synopsis. Oh, okay, the very end down here says, at least that's the plan until the trouble turns to a real danger. But I feel like that kind of implies everything, and crime is not what I was expecting to come into this. The way that these people, like these criminals, were introduced as well, it reminded me a lot of the Wicked Villains series, because that felt like it was quite obvious that the characters were characters that Lucy Score has potentially written about before or will write about in the future. Because I know you have this series, which is the Knock 'Em Out series, but she also has the Blue Moon small town romance series, the Bootleg Spring series, Sinner and Saint, Riley Thorne, and a bunch of standalones. So I feel like some of these characters are going to come into play, if not throughout the rest of this series, which I feel like this is more about the residents than some of, but people can come into the town, that can be part of the plot. But yeah, I definitely feel like she's alluding to something that maybe I haven't read or something that is to come. I think that this is a little bit on the nose as well. I think it's a little bit obvious and indulgent that the characters keep ending up in these situations where they start sparring, and it's supposed to be hot and it's supposed to be sexy, but at this point, like 200 pages in, I kind of just want to get on with it. But that being said, when I do get into it, like, I'm having a decent time, like, it's entertaining. I just don't think that this is going to be a 5-star romance for me. So this vlog, is it going to be ending today? I kind of did want to maybe take us to the end of the weekend, depending on how I feel. Because I do, before Tuesday, need to finish Knock Knock Open Wide by Neil Sharpson for Jordaline's Patreon book club. It is only 300 pages, so I don't think it's going to take me too long. But like I said, the vlog that I'm going to be starting next is Shelve It or Scrap It. So then I'm going to be introducing another book alongside these two that I have to read. So I will have a think about it today and see what happens. But this one, because I do think I am gonna go get a coffee and pick this up now, but this one is a horror set in Ireland about a young woman who she wants to bring her girlfriend home, but her mother's an alcoholic, and in the past her mother found this dead body on the side of the road, took it to a remote location and did something to it that she's never spoken about. So this girl doesn't want her girlfriend to meet her alcoholic mother, and then also this has something to do with like an Irish children's TV show and a goat puppet, but I'm not sure like how that all fits in. So I'm actually excited to get into a horror. I feel like I'm weird because I'm riddled with anxiety right now, but I do feel like something that like changes up the pace from what I typically read is generally good. So yeah, and I have been wanting to start this one, like I've been excited to start this one since Jordan asked me to do the book club. So I think I'm gonna go get a coffee. I'm gonna try and get myself together, like organize my thoughts into something productive and make a little bit of a start on this one. So I've got my coffee, which is one of the sweet vanilla Nespresso pods. I have my book, and for this one I'm going to be using one of my Patreon bookmarks. I think this one is from 2022 and it's the Halloween one because it's not often I get to use this because I don't often read horror. And let's hope that this horror novel sorts out my crippling anxiety for the day so that I could actually get something done.
Missing his calls. It's funny just how easily a family can drift apart.
So I did manage to get done what I was aiming for. I needed to send my Patreon bookmark in for print today, which I have just done. And while I was working on that, I listened to like 80 pages of Sleeping Giants. I was gonna say I'm surprised I haven't read more of this. I just haven't been on my game this week. So because I haven't been on my usual routine, I haven't been listening to audiobooks like when I usually would. And so I'm only like 230 pages into this. I am still really enjoying it, and I'm very interested to see where this goes, especially like later in the series, because I feel like there's only so long we can keep going along this same kind of route, like through this research project. I do like how much it's surprising me, and I feel like the full cast audio is really adding to that. Like I was on a walk with Brie earlier in the week and there was periods where there were screams in this book and I was shook at that. I was like, what is going on? And some of the way like that the information is revealed, like because it's transcripts, it will happen after an event, and the way that it's pieced together I feel like really adds to the drama and the shock factor of it. I will say that the interviewer, who I'm pretty sure doesn't have a name, he's like this mysterious guy who's overseeing this project for whatever reason. I do feel like we are going to get a reveal about him, but I do feel like he is a little bit over the top with the way that he really lays it in that like he's in charge, there's nothing you can do about it, he's going to get his way, and the way that he kind of like threatens and intimidates people like that can get a little bit tedious to listen to after a while, and it's the same kind of thing over and over again. But I'm definitely having a good time with it, and I do think that the audiobook was the best route to go. And then I read 40 pages of Knock Knock Open Wide as well, which I have never read a horror, I don't think I have anyway, read a horror that's actually ever scared me, and I don't read the most horror, so obviously like it's not particularly surprising, but this one so far is unsettling, a little bit weird, a little bit sinister, and I just hope that it's not going to be weird for the sake of being weird. Like we all know that I hate stuff that's like super ambiguous, so I'm hoping that it comes together where like it has a point and like a little bit of an explanation. But I'm pretty sure that when I first mentioned I was reading this, a bunch of people said that all they knew about it, like all they'd heard, is that it was really good and it was really weird. So that is my biggest concern right now, but I am only 40 pages into it, so we'll see how it goes. Everything I've read so far has been in the past timeline, and I'm about to jump like 20 years forward, and then I think from that point on it potentially alternates between the two. So I'm definitely having a better day at this point in the afternoon than I was this morning. I'm feeling a little bit better, and I'm actually feeling even more better because earlier this week I had a meeting to organize a new Trover trip. So I'm going to be sharing the exact details of that with you probably maybe in my next vlog, but some of the details have just come back, so I can now confirm that it is definitely going ahead, and we are going to be going to Zanzibar next July. So at this point, before everything's been finalized, I'm going to put a link down in my description box to my Trover Trip profile, and there is a little box on there where you can enter your name and your email address to get notified about this trip, like when it goes live, when you can secure a spot if you are interested, as well as any other trips that I host going forward. This trip in particular has a couple of really cool wildlife things on it that I'm really excited about, and Zanzibar is like a super idyllic location, so if it sounds good to you, then the link will be down below, and I'll let you know a little bit more when I know a little bit more. But today actually I forgot, my mirror is arriving. I ordered a full length mirror for my bedroom, which I think I've mentioned at some point, but it was on back order and it's supposed to be coming today. The estimated time is between 3 and 7 and it's 3:30 now, so that's obviously not the best because I don't want it like turning up at 7 p.m. But I'm really excited and I'm so glad that I don't have to squat on the floor, or I won't have to squat on the floor anymore to take outfit pics. So I will show you that before we wrap up this vlog. If we are wrapping up this vlog today, I still have not decided, but I'll definitely show you that when it gets here because it is so bougie and I just want to see it.
Finally getting married to an angel in human form, but I still think about Nashville. We're staying here the right call, and it's always gone too fast, like a trip to the beach or the life of James Dean, and it kills me to think I'm avoiding the pill I can't swallow, and it comes by.
So my mirror has arrived and it's potentially too big to get up the stairs. So we're gonna have to do some wiggling. We got it up the stairs.
That'd be right.
Now we just need to get it into where it's supposed to be going. And then hopefully just slide it right around.
And again!
Push it more that way. Lift it if you can.
I've got it lifted.
Ah, it's toppling, be careful. Can you move it very slightly more towards the wall? Just yet. And then my end. Just a smidge.
That wall or this wall?
This one. Stop. Got it?
Yep. This is going to look more child longer.
I think more towards the curtain.
On the curtain.
Right, I feel like it's, oh,
It's touching here.
right. That's right then, right? We did it! Fuck the delivery guy, man. So I am about to take us downstairs to talk about Knock Knock Open Wide and also to wrap up this vlog. But I realised that I didn't really actually show you the mirror last night. I just kind of dragged it in the room and then it was late. Like it was past 7 p.m. We hadn't had dinner. We put it on hold because we didn't know, like we got a delivery slot for this mirror between 3 and 7 and it came like literally at 7. So then after that, like it's a 50-kilo mirror. So after we'd wrestled it in here, we literally just went and ate and then I worked out and played Fortnite because Friday's Fortnite night. So yeah, here it is. Isn't she gorgeous? I am very pleased with her. I'll take you a little bit further away as well. You can kind of see her in her full glory. So this one's coming out now. I don't know what I want to do with this. This was left in our house when we moved in and it's a gold mirror, which obviously I love, but it needs restringing and I tried to and I just don't think I did a good job at all and it's kind of really put me off trying again. So we'll see what we end up doing with this, but it is coming out of here now because we no longer need it. My makeup and stuff I'm going to tuck either under there but potentially behind the mirror, because the good thing about it is that this hides the internet, and then we also have like the hard drive and the router, which we're going to tuck behind there. And I'm going to sort all that stuff out today because I also need to, like, it came with like you can see my finger mark with like a film of dust in it. So it also needs cleaning. In terms of reading, at the end of this vlog, I did not manage to finish the books that I was currently reading, that I started this vlog currently reading, although I have made a significant bit of progress. So Sleeping Giants I've read a little bit of since I spoke to you yesterday. I'm 287 pages in because I did a bit of cleaning in the afternoon and I also went to Tesco to pick up some things because I'm going to be baking today. So I listened to a little bit more. I'm 287 pages in, enjoying it a lot, and I only have about 2 hours left of the audio now, so this should be done pretty soon. In terms of Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, I did read, I think around, was it 150-ish pages? I wasn't very far into it, I don't think, at the beginning of this vlog, and we had a bit of a change of genre. It went from what I assumed was like a chill contemporary romance to a little bit of a crime romance, so we'll see how that plays out in the remaining like 300 pages because this book is ridiculously long. But yeah, like I'm having an okay time with this. It's entertaining, it's an easy read, but I'm not like absorbed, and I don't think this is going to be like a 5-star or anything. And then as for the book that I started yesterday, for what reason? Because I'm clearly reading enough, especially going into Shelf It or Scrap It, but that was Knock Knock Open Wide by Neil Sharpson. So I do need to have this finished by Tuesday, I think. I've got like, can you see my like, I don't know if you can, there's light fingernail scratches from me reading this, so maybe I should take the dust jacket off, yeah, because it's just a plain hardback underneath. But this one I'm reading for Jordline's Patreon book club, and am I enjoying this at this point? I can't really say. The writing style I'm not loving, and it also has like quite a disjointed nature of storytelling where like as we're narrating the events like in each time period, it will have sometimes like a 5-sentence paragraph of what one person is doing and then jump to a different perspective, and all of these fragments kind of, it's like it's telling the story chronologically from everybody's perspective who is involved, regardless of where they are at this time. So whether they're at their home or whether they're the person being abducted or the person who's responsible for the abduction, like it's all happening kind of in chronological order. So it can be quite short paragraphs, and you're kind of trying to piece together like what's actually happening here. Now I have read a third of this. I'm 104 pages in, and my plan is to read 75 pages a day up until Monday to have it done for the live show, which I'm pretty sure is going to be on Tuesday. The plot of this one, I'm not at a point where I feel like I can give you a good overview of what to expect from this book without spoilers, because like I don't know at this point what is best left for you to find out and what's like good to know to get an idea of the book going in, if that makes sense. But it's definitely a horror. It's definitely a bit spooky. It has, I want to say like apparitions. What they are, I do not know yet, but essentially just to flesh the plot out a little bit more, we are following a woman in 1979 who goes to her sister's party. Now she doesn't have a good relationship with her mother, and her sister's left home, doesn't talk to her mother anymore either. So without her mother's permission, she goes to this sister's party. Her sister's in her like early 20s, and she meets her boyfriend there, who she's a little bit estranged from because she was really into him and she was worried about that, what that would mean. She got commitment issues and didn't talk to him. So her sister's orchestrated this meeting, and this guy proposes with this really, I want to say it's an ugly ring. Like it seems to be like this big heavy piece of silver, and she accepts. She's over the moon, but she has to drive back to, I think it's Dublin, drive back to the city anyway for work the next day. So she leaves this house at like 5 in the morning, and she finds this dead body along the side of the road with its face being eaten by a dog. Like this is gory, it's pretty grim, just letting you know. So she's like, oh my god, like I can't leave this body here. So she drags it into the car and she goes to the nearest house she can find, which is this farmhouse, where she immediately collapses from like exhaustion, having to carry this body, driving through the rain. It's like 5 in the morning, and the farmer takes her in, takes the dead body in as well, and he is very aware of what is happening here. Like he has something to do with whatever it is that's going on, and she spends like a amount of time in this farmhouse that has the farmer, the wife, and the dead body in it, and then she never speaks of the incident again. Now this does alternate between 2 timelines because we have her daughter. Editing Becca here, just popping in to say I misunderstood from the synopsis which daughter is which. So Betty, the person that I'm going to be talking about, thinking that she is the daughter of Attain, who is the woman that found the dead body on the side of the street. Betty is not her daughter. Aisling is her daughter, and she is the one with obviously the dark, murky family history. Betty is just in love with Aisling, so kind of gets dragged into this by proxy. Just wanted to clarify because I am going to be talking about it now as though Aisling is from a different family and Betty is Attain's daughter, but that is not the case. In the modern day, well, it's not modern, it's actually 1999, so like 25 years ago, but the daughter is at university and she's falling in love with this girl. Now this girl also potentially has a mysterious family background that is potentially tying into the thing that happened to Betty, the main character in 1999's mother. Betty doesn't have a good relationship with her mother because she is, I believe that she has an issue with drinking too much, although we haven't actually met her from Betty's perspective yet. And I think it is about her kind of finding out what happened to her mother whilst also exploring this weird stuff that's going on with her girlfriend's family. And while that is happening, we're also getting into like the repercussions of what happened in 1979 after the actual event, to kind of try and piece everything together. I think that it might have something to do with fair folk and Irish folklore, because this is obviously set in Ireland and we have started to explore this a little bit. And it also has something to do with a TV show, a children's TV show that has a goat puppet, and the presenter essentially says things like, oh, like, you have to behave, otherwise, I think he's called Puckeen, the puppet, otherwise Puckeen is gonna get you. But like, this puppet never comes out of the box. Like, you never ever see what the puppet looks like or who the puppet is, even though the show is named after him, although sometimes, maybe potentially, he does come out of the box. So I think that that's pretty like a decent overview of like what's happening without giving anything really away. It is very mysterious. It's put together quite, not ambiguously, but it's kind of piecing together, not necessarily in a way that makes it too hard to puzzle out. Like, it's not too ambiguous, but it's doing it in a way so that you intentionally don't have all of the pieces. So you are trying to like scramble, and like every new chapter just like locks in one little piece of what is potentially happening, to hopefully by the end of this book build a full picture. Definitely living up to the horror elements as well. I would say that this is potentially at this point one of the scariest horrors that I've read. Not that I'm terrified or anything, it's just scarier than like Grady Hendrix, which I think that's pretty much all of the horror I've ever really read. I'm not much of a horror girly. I wish I was. It's just that like with fantasy, you know, the thing that people talk about where they say it's talked about a lot when you're transitioning from YA to adult, like how do you go into the adult fantasy section and pick a book when you don't know anything about the books? I'm like that with genres that aren't sci-fi and fantasy. So I go in to the sci-fi and fantasy section, it's like, oh yeah, I've heard of this author, like this author has been compared to this series is supposed to be really good. Like, I could go into the adult sci-fi and fantasy section and pick out a book knowing a little bit about it or knowing what people think about it. I can't really do that with horror. I can't do that with thrillers. I can do it a little bit with romance, but that is why when it comes to talking about genres like this, I'm a little bit less experienced, because this genre is not like the sphere that I'm in. Like, I know a lot about fantasy and sci-fi. I know very little about horror. I like reading it, but I'm not confident going up and like picking horror books that I think that I'll like based on my taste, because I don't know what my tastes are and I don't know a lot of authors. So if this was compared to like, can I think of a horror, oh, Paul Tremblay, he's a horror author, I wouldn't know what that means because I haven't read from him either. Anyway, that was a side tangent. Next week, as I've mentioned, like I think about 5 times at this point, we're going to be going into Shelve It or Scrap It. So I'm not going to be talking about these in the next vlog that I'm filming, although I am going to be kind of reading them alongside. So they should all definitely be finished before the end of the month, and you'll be able to find out my final thoughts on hopefully all of them, fingers crossed, in my wrap up. But I am aware that we only have like less than 2 weeks of the month at the point of me filming this, and I have a significant amount of books still on my TBR that I haven't even started yet. So we'll see how it goes. I think I'm a little bit heady in the clouds at the minute, but I do hope you guys have enjoyed this vlog if you made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.